can all hear me. Once I know that, then we'll get on with it. I hope everybody's doing all right. All right, I see number one. Yeah, I got this weird eye infection. It started a couple of days ago. I don't even know if it's an infection, but I went to the doctor today and it looks like somebody punched me in the eye socket. It's like blood red. I don't know what's going on. So I got some eye drops. Hopefully that'll help. If not, then it's going to be a fun ER visit to find out what the fuck is going on. So I'm going to say hello to a couple of people in the chat. Tom Sheehy, how are you? Jesse Roth, how are you? Mike D, what's going on? Pounding the pink veal. I gave you your wrench back. You should be good to go there. Let's see who else we have. Miss Can't Be Wrong, the best there is. There she is. Terrell, how are you, buddy? I'm going to scroll down. Let's see. Randy Tippett, how are you? Let's see. Stacy, hello, how are you doing? My bird just started throwing a fit for no reason. Dustin Rhodes with shaking. Let's see who else we got in here. The Smiths, Dana, how are you? If you have not subscribed to the Haunted Ghost Tube, you should. If Dana, if you want to throw your links in there, go right ahead. Have no problem with that at all. Let me keep going down here and see who else we got in the chat. I'm sort of doing this like Cyclops tonight. All right. Tommy Stiggs, how you doing, buddy? Hope you're doing well. Tom Arilotta, how are you? How are you doing? Yeah, everything's going all right for the most part other than my eye. We've got a new show coming out on the podcast this week. I'm excited about that. The Gravano doc is about ready, so I'm imagining in the next 2 weeks or so, I should be putting that out. If you guys are interested in joining our podcast, please go to mobtalkradioshow.supercast.com. And for all your breaking news, that is really, even though it's my own site, I just got to say that it's good information. It's real information, not shit off Wikipedia. You can't get it anywhere else. If you're interested in that, go over to mtrchronicles.com. Also, if you get an opportunity, I like to support my friends. Please head over to the Smiths Haunted Ghost Tube, Tyler Nolan, and the Grim Life Collective. We have a zero tolerance policy with any bullshit, any trolls. If you come in here talking about another content creator, you're going to be thrown out. I just don't deal with it, and we're trying to do a different thing. If anybody has any information on Anthony Bergiano, do me a favor, email the show at mobtalkradioshow@gmail.com. Do me a solid. If it's just nonsense and BS, don't bother sending to it. Don't send it to me. Just send me realistic stuff. Also, I never do this, but here you go. If you wish to donate, there is my PayPal. I'm going to leave that up for just 2 minutes, and I'm going to take it down. My focus is not money. My focus is bringing you good content. So that's what we're going to do. Let's see, Peter, how are you doing? Let's see, great info done by a true professional. Well, I try. I don't always get it right. But I try to do my best, and when I don't get it right, I certainly let you know. John, how are you? Miss Charlie Stein, hello, how are you? Anthony Pergiano is an informant in the South Philadelphia mafia case. There's just a lot of stuff that I already know about him and stuff that we have on him, but you never know. People may have information that can help some people, and that's sort of what I'm trying to do, and that's sort of what I've always done. So, that being that, just really quickly, just because I was thinking about it earlier today, like we talk about organized crime all the time on this show, obviously. And one of the things we're going to start doing is doing a live twice a week. I haven't figured out what days that's going to be. There's going to be a third live that's going to be for members only, and that's going to be a little different. For those that have joined, like the membership, hit the click or the fucking join button over on YouTube. We're going to do something nice and easy for them. But when we start the lives, there's going to be 2 a week. And usually the first one is going to be we're going to talk about a subject or a person or a time in mob history. And then at the end of the show, we'll, obviously, talk about it. And you guys are welcome to ask questions about anything organized crime. Then the secondary show, I'm going to bring some people on, let most of you come on, and we're just going to shoot the shit and talk about organized crime. It'll be a little bit different. It seems like the sort of current thing that's going on, is, a lot of lives that I have checked out that involve organized crime. Some are okay, some are, forget about it. But I think that there's a yearning for real dialogue and a yearning for history. And a lot of people just don't do that. And it's just, how I do things. How is Andy? He's doing all right, I guess. We had a conversation the other day. He's got some stuff going on, so that's why the other podcast is so far behind. But it's like anything else in life. Some days are good, some days are bad, and he's just got some stuff going on he has to deal with, and so we're just kind of putting everything on hold as far as sort of that goes. What else do we have going on? So one of the things I wanted to talk about really quick, because I didn't come totally prepared, but I do have some things. We talk all the time, and a lot of people that cover the mob rarely ever talk about mob bosses that had self-control. I think there's a big difference between somebody who had good self-control would be Frank Costello, would be Carlo Gambino. These guys had good self-control, probably Frank Costello more than anybody. But then in contrast to that, you have the complete polar opposite. You have nut jobs like Nicky Scarfo and Vito Genovese. And if you look historically at the most successful organized crime bosses, these are the ones who never really spend a day in jail. They die in their own beds. And for the most part, they're fairly passive. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't get pissed off and react to things. But there's reactionary and then there's very passive. And I think when you look in terms of, that's why I like to talk about Lucky Luciano all the time, being the godfather of organized crime in this country. He really took a passive approach. I mean, granted, he ordered murders and did stuff like that, but the ones that truly are passive to the point where it's about the bottom line, and that's money. When it's about money, everything seems to go right. But when you look historically at organized crime, you bring in somebody like, good example, Nicky Scarfo, when he starts killing everybody. We talked about it last week. It really creates drama and friction where there doesn't need to be any, and it creates rats. It really does at the end of the day. I think when I look in terms of organized crime, what's truly interesting to me isn't really the stuff that's in the headlines. It's the stuff behind the scenes, the politics of it all. And just, I like to look at how they dealt with certain issues. Because there are some that dealt with issues very easily. Luciano was one of them. And then there's the reverse of that. You have like a John Gotti who did not really react rationally to some stuff at times. And that's just the truth. That's just the truth. But nobody said being the top of a crime family was easy either. So, it is what it is. Well, Peter raises a good point. Gaspipe Castle and Vicamuso. I mean, those were like serial killers, and listen, it's a different time period right now because there's a moratorium on murder. It's been that way in New York for a long time now. And there's not mob murders. And so the question becomes, when people see that sort of changing and the corner store shakedowns have stopped, a lot of people say, well, the mob is dead. And that's not really true. They just evolve into something a little bit different. But I would tell you, I think realistically, you're one or two incidents away from somebody getting murdered. It doesn't take much. But I think that bosses have traditionally learned that that's not always the best resolution. Now, one of the questions I get all the time is why Joe Bonanno wasn't killed for what he did. And I have it's taken me a long time to kind of think about why that might have happened. And you guys may not, agree with me on this, but I think the reality is that Carlo Gambino could have had him killed. Would have been no problem. And everybody would have signed off on it because Joe Bonanno was the thorn in the side of the mafia for a long time. But my theory is the reason why he didn't was because Carlo Gambino really was an old time thinker. He was from the old country. And to him, I think disrespect was far worse than being murdered. You get killed, you're out of your misery, whatever. But the fact that nobody respected Joe Bonanno ever again and wouldn't have anything to do with him was probably worse to that guy and his ego than death. And that's why I think they didn't do it. In reality, I could be wrong. What do you guys think? Do you guys have any theories on that? Vito Rizzuto was probably one of the best in that regard. No, I completely and thoroughly agree with you on that. And a lot of people forget the Rizzutos were worldwide. They weren't just a Canadian or Italy faction. They were worldwide. They are like sort of like Andromeda. They're not. They were nearly never as big, but at one point they were worldwide, and that's bigger than the five families. Seymour Scagnetti, how are you doing, buddy? Let's see what we got going on here. Taking somebody's life should never be a first option, and I agree with you. I think there's other ways. It's like the old saying: if you kill a guy who owes you money off of a loan. Well, you kill the guy, you're never going to get your fucking money back. So it's like it sort of defeats the purpose. But at the same time, if murder is off the table, then I think what you have is sort of chaos in a lot of different ways. Let's see, cigar guy Albert Anastasia killed people not in the mob. He said a guy on TV who turned a bankrupt. Yeah, Willie Sutton. Yeah, Willie Sutton is the guy that Albert Anastasia wanted killed. And listen, Albert Anastasia had a belief that if you're a rat, you don't belong on this earth. And that's exactly what Albert Anastasia did. He had Arnold, who was it? It was Willie Sutton was the bank robber, and it was Arnold Schuster, who was like a wannabe journalist who made the fucking mistake of ratting the guy Willie Sutton out, because Willie Sutton was respected by everybody in the mob. Everybody loved Willie Sutton. And guys looked at Willie Sutton, like Willie Sutton was the guy in prison. When you showed up, Italian, Jewish, black, didn't matter. He would make sure you got shoes. He would make sure you got all new stuff. He just looked out for people that were like-minded like him. And that's why everybody respected him. And so when Arnold Schuster made the mistake of ratting him out, not only did Arnold Schuster do that, but then he goes on national television to brag about it. Not a very bright move, because within 3 or 4 days, Albert Anastasia sees all this is, I want him dead. And that's what happened. They killed him. Willie Sutton was a gifted bank robber. We talked about Willie Sutton over on YouTube, actually. I can't remember how long ago we did, but we definitely did. As far as Rosario Gambino, I couldn't tell you. Why kill someone? It's easy. Much fun to let them live in fear. Well, and that's where the argument kind of comes in, Jesse. The argument now comes in is that if that's off the table, then what are guys truly fearing? Because let's just be really honest. I mean, I think people shook in their fucking shoes when Carlo Gambino was pissed off, and some of these other guys, because their reputation was such that they had a limited capacity for bullshit. But then when you have a guy like Nicky Scarfo running around, or like Vito Genovese, or like Carmine Galante running around, nobody feels safe either. So it's some crazy stuff. Boss is the worst job to have in Cosa Nostra. You absolutely eventually get life. Captain is position to have. I agree with you, but I don't. You know what I think the best position to have, Tommy, is? To be an unmade guy and be an associate. And the reason why is because they can't tag on those hierarchical leadership charges to you. That's number one, which will get you double time, Tommy. You know this. But two, you can work with everybody. So if you're not property of anybody, you can work with all five families. You can work down in South Philly. You can go to Jersey, Cavalcante's, the Lucchese's in Jersey, whoever you want. I think that is the better option. Like I always tell people when they ask me, because it's a question I get all the time, in a world of organized crime, be a Jimmy Burke and be a Joe Watts. Now, granted, Jimmy Burke died in prison and Joe Watts is like just getting out. But I think you're better off that way. I don't think that there's ever been a different time in the history of organized crime where is it beneficial to even be a made guy now? And I think that's a relative question. Is it beneficial? What are you getting from that? Because if you can do the exact same thing and not be a made guy in any criminal family, why would you not? I would do that. Are you kidding me? Getting your button and all of that is an honor and a respect thing. And I understand that, but I'd rather be able to work with 50 different people than say 5. That's just me. Tom Sheehy is 100% right. Scared people will kill you 100%. I would rather just watch from the outside and be entertained. Well, there you go. Whose idea was it to stop all the murder in the mob? I don't know specifically. It was a commission decision. It was a commission decision. Believe it or not, I believe you guys aren't going to like this, but I believe Joey Massino was the one who ordered that. He wanted it stopped. It's amazing how he orders it stopped after he whacked the three captains and took over his crime family. It's amazing how guys change that sort of philosophy. Yes, associate job, no doubt. That's exactly how I did it. 100%. Well, yeah. I mean, it comes down to, and Tommy, you know this as well as I do, because I have a feeling Tommy and I have the same sort of mentality here. Is think about it in terms of construction. Would you rather just be a drywall guy, or would you rather be the guy that does everything from the architectural design to the hiring? You would want to do it all. So rather than pigeonhole yourself into a corner and say, well, I'm with this company, construction company, be the guy that's subcontracted by everybody, because you're going to make more money. You're going to make more relationships that way. And you're never going to have a problem that we've seen in organized crime history. And that is being loyal to one person and one person only. Be loyal to everybody. Now, granted, the bigger and wider the scope that you're involved in, the more opportunities there's going to be financially, but there's also a lot more opportunities to go to jail. And so I think the ones that have been very successful associates, because nobody ever really talks about them, because people sort of feel like because they're not made, they don't have street credibility, or they don't have any power. But I'm telling you, I've known some associates in my life, just from doing research, and people I know in just everyday life that are powerhouses, that scare the death out of people. So I think it just comes down to, if you don't have to be attached to a single thing, don't be. The other thing I wanted to try to sort of laugh about is, because we, always on organized crime shows, you see people talking about murder and mayhem. There is nobody on planet Earth that killed more people in organized crime than Giuseppe Greco. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go ahead and you can look up the Sicilian Wars over in Italy. And here's something a lot of people don't know, is that the Sicilian Cosa Nostra over in Italy did not have a commission until 1970. They never took the commission aspect of it. That was Luciano's kind of thing. He sort of invented it. The Sicilians over in Italy never used a commission ever in their life until 1970. And when they did, it was a who's who of powerful people. It was Toto Rina, Giuseppe Callo, Filippo Marchesi, Rosario Riccobono, and Michael Greco, excuse me. And Giuseppe Greco was the nephew of Michael. And there were 400 murders just in Palermo from 1981 to 1983. Giuseppe Greco is credited with 80 murders all on his own. That trumps Roy DeMeo and all of these other guys. But they never had a commission. They never had a sitting commission, because everything over in Italy is clannish and a little different. But that was something that truly separated American Cosa Nostra from what we know as organized crime in Italy. Do you think the mob killed Albert Anastasia because other bosses feared him so much he had to go? No, I don't think it was fear. I think he pissed a lot of people off. First of all, he killed a civilian, which we can argue, this, that, and the third. But he was also encroaching on Meyer Lansky's turf. He wanted a part of Meyer Lansky's stuff in the Caribbean, which Ray Patriarca, Santo Traficante, and Meyer Lansky all had stuff down in the Caribbean. A lot of people don't know that. But more importantly, in Cuba. Anastasia wanted a big kickback from Cuba. And when Meyer Lansky said, this is my operation, like, what do you think you're going to do? Rather than just accept it, Anastasia starts building his own stuff in Cuba and basically tells Meyer Lansky to go fuck himself. And that created a huge problem. And it sort of just played into the sort of the atmosphere of what was going on in New York at the time. Obviously, we know Genovese wanted to take over. He wanted Costello out. He felt like he deserved it, even though he fled to Italy for 7 years to avoid murder charges. When he came back, he felt like everything was his, and he needed somebody who was like-minded enough to not turn a blind eye and sort of agree with his idea of taking over the family. And who does he go to but Carlo Gambino? Without Gambino, Anastasia could have never been hit. But as a result of that, and we've talked about this before, The one person that Carlo Gambino feared the most was Neil Dellacroce because he was afraid Neil Dellacroce would react and kill him for it. So there was a lot of politicking going on back and forth, but a lot of Anastasia's problem was he couldn't get along with everybody. I mean, look what he did with Mangano. They used to fist fight over money. You know what I mean? He used to beat the crap out of his own boss because they argued over money. So Anastasia was a little reckless. That's number one. Number two, his a lot of his business dealings started to move south into Jersey, which sort of raised a lot of eyebrows. But there was just a lot of stuff that was going on, and Anastasia sort of held on to the Brooklyn waterfront with his claws into it, wouldn't let anybody in, and it just created sort of was he feared? Of course he was, but I think the reality was when you piss off the mob's money making machine in Meyer Lansky, your expectancy is not going to be very long. And that's just the reality of it. A great way to put it. I was fortunate enough not to get made. Well, some would say, that's all they aspire to be. But I don't think at this point that's something that you need. You know what I mean? Um, but it is what it is. Grambino, what's shaking? What is shaking? Is that Danny Green as your picture? The one and only Danny Green. Joe Watts is a scary guy. He's a hell of a moneymaker, too. Hell of a moneymaker. Sal Vitale, the under rat to Messina. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it, buddy. Brooklyn Rob 1. I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. Doing good. I can't really complain a whole lot. Is the mob in Delaware? I wouldn't say they're there, but I would probably tell you that there's people that have operations there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Could Carlo have been president of Ford or mayor of New York City? Yeah, I mean, he was a smart guy. Smart guy. He didn't need to say anything. I think it was something like I read earlier today. It was like under 2,000 hours of wiretaps. The only words they ever caught him saying were frog legs. That was it. Guy just never said anything. He was smart, and it goes right back to the self control and self awareness factor. Like I've said it a million times. If you got to talk about something that's considered for your eyes and ears only, why are you picking up a cell phone? Go to a fucking graveyard. Go to a garbage dump. Go somewhere where nobody can hear you. Nobody can wiretap a turd on the ground. You know what I mean? But it just comes down to guys get too comfortable. And I think anybody that goes to sleep at night that's involved and has a peaceful night's sleep is out of their fucking mind. Who do you think enjoyed murder, body mutilation, and disposal more than hand? Well, I don't know. And see, the thing about Roy DeMeo is he didn't do a lot of dismemberment himself. That's the thing. He taught others how to do it. But Roy DeMeo wasn't like he didn't pull the trigger on like some 30 murders. His crew is responsible for that. Sammy Gravano, same sort of deal. Only admitted to the FBI he killed one person by himself. And on Friday, oh, you guys wait. You guys wait. You thought he was a liar. And if you guys go to YouTube, you'll see Sammy Gravano was a liar. Okay, that's number one. This Friday, we're going to do one over on the podcast, which is mobtalkradio.supercast.com. That's going to blow away what you heard last week. It's just unreal. And like I said, it's never about John Gotti being innocent. It's more about a man should only be convicted on evidence and not the words of another man. And the majority of a lot of these mob cases, especially when you look at informants, the majority of informants that come forward aren't telling you a person by person narrative of what they saw and what happened. They're telling you a third and fourth party story they heard from somebody else. And that's my thing. If you're not standing there, it becomes hearsay, but you can look for yourself. There's plenty of instances in cases and indictments where it's words of another person. And that's my thing. And the FBI doesn't really need that information corroborated. That's just the truth. I'm not saying everybody's innocent. I'm just saying you should be convicted on the merit of what you did and what you did. All right, can you guys hear me now? Am I back? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Press 1 if you can hear me now. Okay, I'll tell you exactly what happened. 100% what happened. We've got a rainstorm coming through here in Manhattan, and everything kind of the lights dimmed for a minute, so I had to come back in, and then I forgot to click the add to stream. So I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. Now it's raining its ass off here now, and sorry about that. Did you guys know that Lucky Luciano in 1929 was stabbed in his face with an ice pick and he got his throat slit and he lived? Can you imagine if he had been killed that night? Mob would look a lot different. Mafia would look a lot different. Diaz, how are you? Pete Fullerton, how are you? Dennison DeMorda. Okay. Yeah, it's just raining. And the way that I have my sort of office set up is like I got wires everywhere and I'm like, don't touch shit. And then I noticed, I looked up and saw that my Wi-Fi glitched. So anyway, we're back. We are back. Yeah, it's a mess right here now. I'm 15 minutes from you. It's pouring. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just looked out the window, Tommy, and I'm on the Lower East Side and I'm looking out my window. I'm like, God damn, I can't even, like, I'm right across from other buildings, like within a stone's throw. I can't even see the building. It's raining so fucking hard. It's crazy. You kick yourself with your own show. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah. The feds cut me off. Well, another thing was, is I reloaded it, came back in, and then it has a button where you have to hit add to stream. And I forgot to totally do that. I forgot to. All right, let's see. Yeah, it's raining like crap here. Yeah, there's some good guys over here. I'm a couple of blocks over from Houston. Hello, Chardonnay. Hello, where are you from in the UK? I have a friend that lives in Manchester. He actually came over here about 2 years ago. He flew over here. We had a good time. We had a good time. He covers serial killers and stuff like that. It's a little disturbing, but you know, yes, I am going to do a show on Youngstown. Well, you know the thing, Tommy, it depends what block you're on. If you go near Stanton, I mean, it's like murders every other night. 2 blocks over from here, murders every night. It just depends what time of year it is, what the weather's like. But the 2 blocks that I live on are pretty nasty, just violent wise. But for the most part, I'm a block from the water. I'm like a 10-minute walk from the Brooklyn Bridge. I live literally, if I go to the end of my street, I can see the Manhattan Bridge. So, it is what it is. And I'm just a stone's throw from Sullivan Street. So, oh, Pearl Street. Okay. I got you. Absolutely. So what's everybody got planned for tonight? Anything good? You guys got any do you guys have any organized crime questions or anything you guys want to talk about? I think I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to sort of mention. Wow, I wish you guys could hear this rain. That's so fucking nuts. And the funny part about living in Manhattan is people. So my buddy from my buddy from Manchester was visiting. And the thing about New York is I think people forget that they have blinds and they forget to shut them. And it's like 2:00 in the morning. My buddy Scott looks over at me, goes, "Look at that." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Look." And he's got his camera and he's flashing pictures. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And there's like across the street, this guy's got like 2 girls and you can just fill yourself in. They didn't care. And so I turned off my lights and ate some popcorn and had a good old time. There you go. Hookers and cocaine. Now that sounds like a party. Sooner than you ever think. Probably Saturday. Probably Saturday. As a matter of fact, I would say 95%. I just got to wait. I'm waiting on a call back from a guy. Yeah, it is. It's insane. Everywhere in New York City is expensive. Tommy will tell you everything's Everything is expensive. You can't get an apartment for like under what, $2,500 in Manhattan, $3,000 a month. It's just reality. And then the food prices itself, it's ridiculous. And then you get so used to it that it's funny because you go to another state and it's like, like I don't know, like a half a pound of hamburger meat. I mean, that's a horrible sort of example, but it's like you go to another state, like on vacation, you're like, holy shit, this is so cheap. Everything in New York is expensive. $15, $16 a pack of cigarettes. I don't pay that though because I get bootleg cigarettes. So I only pay like $9.50, which is still fucking ridiculous. But I am trying to figure that out, Dana. Probably like in the next 2 weeks. We're gonna do one. Probably in the next 2 weeks. Oh, I don't know. I live in the city. I don't even worry about gas. I take a train wherever I need to go. It's cheaper. Listen, believe it or not, it's cheaper to take Uber and the train than it is to fucking drive anywhere in the city. Because you're not going to find a parking spot anywhere in the city either. If so, you're going to park 16 blocks away, and the next morning when you go up, your tires are going to be gone. If it's not that, then it's like you're going to pay $1,500 a month for a parking garage fee. Yep, I agree. Jeff, this is not the 80s with hookers and coke. No, but in the 1980s, the Lower East Side was nothing but musicians, heroin, and hookers. It's changed. All right. Let's see. We all go to Spain. You know what, Tom? I'm going to tell you this. That's where all the gangsters in Europe go. In Marbella, Spain. I can tell you that certifiably. I know a lot of guys that live in Spain. Cigarettes are $22 here in Canada. Okay, I will not be buying cigarettes in Canada. Holy shit, $22. At that point, that's when we get a truck and we back into a fucking store and take them at $22. Oh my God. Let's see. Tactical Terminator. Good evening. Happy 6-1 to you in the chat. Best organized crime pie. Well, I don't know if I'm the best, but I enjoy what I do. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be doing it. I'm not Machiavellian cheese. I see what you say, but I got a lot of friends in Detroit who might not like me saying that. I was in a well, almost a lottery for a unit and a pearl. His luck, a friend took a pinch, ended that. 600 a month would have been, yeah. Trust me, 600 a month would be like nothing. Now it's like 4 times that. It's ridiculous. A pack of 40s in Australia, $60. What do I think is the most significant hit in mob history? Ooh, that's a good one. The most significant? See, I can go 2 ways because one that's the most significant was also the stupidest one, and that would have been the murder of Paul Castellano. And it was significant because it changed the trajectory of the Gambino crime family. But if we're talking about importance, probably killing Carmine Galante was one of the biggest ones because he gets out of jail, bombs Frank Costello's mausoleum, announces to the world, fuck you, I'm doing what I want. He's going to move in on everybody's drug business and cut everybody the fuck out of it. To me, that's an integral hit. He was a maniac. And really, realistically, it's one of the only mob bosses that officially was greenlit to be killed, which some people argue he really wasn't the boss, but he thought he was. LOL, don't I know? Told you my mate. Yeah. Absolutely, Tom. Yeah. I know a couple of European guys that are Andromeda guys that live in Spain part of the year, and they're always trying to get me to go to Spain. Oh, you could stay at my house for a week, won't be a problem. I'm like, yeah, it kind of will be a problem. You know what I mean? Hello, Jane Creek. How are you? This Can't Be Wrong is leaving for brighter tomorrows. How big of a drug dealer was Casso in his height compared to other? Wow, he was big, but he wasn't. He wasn't a Pablo Escobar, that's for sure. He wasn't an El Chapo, that's for sure. What the fuck? Why is my desk wet? Oh, it's my Gatorade. I thought it was raining in my fucking house. He was a big drug dealer. He was much bigger than. Ooh, you guys hear the thunder? Wow. No, he dealt in volume. He dealt in volume, but I don't think he was that big. You know. That a very minor issue I told you I had. So I was telling my dad about it. And he got all ruffled and yelled at me. Don't they know who you are? I think he's getting dementia. Well, you're the friend of many people on YouTube. Oh, there he is, the one, the only, Gunsmoke, the Don. What's going on, Gunsmoke? This is the type of show that is needed once or twice a week. Very nicey nice. Well, yeah, you know what, Tommy? I just try to keep it simple. I could have come on here tonight and talked about something that's really pissing me off and something that's just beyond fucked up. But rather than bring it up, we're just going to keep it moving and not discuss it because if I did, believe me, if Bill Cotolo isn't killed, the Columbus would have been. That's one of the most introspective things I think I've seen in a long time, Pounding. And you're right. But the problem Bill Cotolo made was behind the scenes trying to overthrow Carmine Persico. Not a bright move. And listen, I'm a firm believer in Greg Scarpa was behind a lot of that stuff because Scarpa if Greg Scarpa could have had it his way, he would have been an FBI informant and a mob boss at the same time. So he fed things to Carmine Persico, put it in his ear, and Carmine reacted. Was it a bad hit and a bad thing to do? I think so. Because Bill Cotolo was a hell of an earner. He was a scary guy. He was a man's man. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to tell you any different, but when you start to jockey yourself a little bit, it's unfortunate. And, I think his son, believe it or not, at one point had said, the Colombo should have been called the Persico crime family just because he of his stranglehold. And I think that there's granted, I don't like what his son did, but I think he had a valid point in saying that. I think if Carmine Persico had sort of given up the reins a little bit, it would have been a different crime family, but guys don't have to give it up. The rule is until you die or give it up, so Gunsmoke the Don says, hey, Jane, with 4 hearts. I am a black man from Ozone Park, Queens, and I idolize the Italians in the neighborhood. Well, that's a good thing to know because often you hear the opposite of that. You know what I mean? I do vape with self-real. I tried vapes. They make me cough. I can't do it. It's like the first time I smoked marijuana when I was like, I don't know, 20 years old. I think I was 20 years old the first time I smoked pot. I wasn't a drug guy, never have been. But that first time I hit this like 8-foot voodoo stick with a surgical mask. Holy shit. They should have told me just inhale small amounts. Not me. I do it like a rock star and I about passed the fuck out. So I can't even do vapes. It makes me cough like crazy. Gibraltar is a big spot for the blank, 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 as well as the Dubai. They used to be sent to the tourist cities in Mexico, but they aren't safe there anymore. Yeah, Dustin, I would agree with you. I think he was he was the second biggest drug dealer, I think, in American Cosa Nostra, but the mob in general. But there was somebody who was a lot bigger than him that nobody ever knows, that I don't think a lot of people know. Is Angela Bruno's daughter still alive? As far as I know, she is. Yeah. I don't know them personally. In my opinion, the most important mob hit in history was Salvatore Maranzano. Jane knows her stuff. I agree. I didn't even think about that. But I think you're right. Tell a grandfather story. Oh God, there's so many. I could tell several. Let me give it some thought and remind me, Easy Champion, in like 5 minutes if I don't say anything. But I got to think. Do you play any video games? Yeah, actually, believe it or not, Wiz Kid, it's funny. I hadn't played video games in years, and I bought an Xbox just because I'm like, you know what? Let me just buy something, and I like downloaded it just recently. I play a lot of the what do you call them? The first person shooter things like Modern Warfare, stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff I like, and like I play hockey or whatever. But I downloaded all 3 Mafia games the other day, old ones, and I'm playing them. They didn't have The Godfather anymore. That was a little pissy, but yeah, I do play from time to time. Absolutely. Was Angelo Bruno the biggest drug dealer? No. There's somebody from New York was the biggest one. Absolutely. Is that guy from Ray's Pizza, was he the biggest? Nope. Let's see. Nope. That's not him either. It's somebody a hell of a lot more current than that. Nobody would know. Let me give you guys a clue, okay? When you own a $4 billion legitimate company that is all throughout the United States, that tells you something. Oh, look at that. There you go. And it wasn't just necessarily that. He controlled all the produce in the city. All of the produce. He owned Faro Foods. A lot of people don't know that. Or Ferraro Foods. That's $1 billion company. You know, he was yeah, absolutely. I met Frank Cali once. A very nice guy. And where I met him is hilarious. You guys want to hear a story about Frank Cali? So I went to the opening of the Travolta Gotti film. Okay. And I was sitting, I don't know, with like 2 other people who I'm not going to mention, and we're watching it. And I look behind me and I see Frank Cali sitting there with someone. It doesn't matter who he was sitting with. And so I got up to go to the bathroom, and I shit you not, this is what happens. Go to the bathroom, and then I'm like, you know what? I want another Coke. Fuck it. So I go to get a refill on my Coke, and he's standing in line buying candy or whatever. He looks over and kind of nods at me, and I nodded him, and yeah, I obviously know who he was. And he's like, good show you got. And that's all he said to me, and he walked away. And I was like, holy shit. So when I went back to my seats, I'm telling the 2 guys next to me, I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, you know what he just said to me? And they're like, what? And I tell them, they're like, that doesn't surprise me. Everybody listens, you know? So there you go. Yep. He was, yeah. Yeah, they deliver everything. As a matter of fact, remember when I talked to you guys about the Catones? You guys ready for this? Go to let me go to mobtalkradio.supercast.com. We talked about the Catone crime family, right? Or the Catone crew. All of their shipments that they were getting coming in were coming from where? Ferraro Foods. And what was very interesting about that is the dough and a lot of other stuff was coming in. They would pull in, you got to understand, this was not a big restaurant. This was a 2-storefront pizzeria. Why on God's earth is a 16-wheeler from Ferraro Foods coming? It's a little weird. Granted, a delivery is a delivery, but there's a lot of other stuff that was coming out of that those trucks. I'm just being honest with you. That's just legitimate truth of the matter. So there you go. Let's see. Yeah, Frank was. He was well loved too. He was well loved. A lot of people loved him. But he was a guy that you weren't going to see anywhere. He controlled all the produce in the city. Like, that's old school shit. You know, you have a tendency of excuse me, not seeing that these days. Are you talking about the Pizza Connection? Well, the Catones were involved in the Pizza Connection. They were involved in it. They covered the D.C. area, Northern Virginia, D.C., and Virginia down in South Carolina and Florida. Oh, I played a Daryl Gates game back like when I was like 15, some kind of SWAT game. But Daryl Gates was a real scumbag. Kelly shares a lot with Luciano as well. Yeah, globally. And that's the operative term, Anaruda. That is the operative term. He was the first organized crime boss that we've seen in probably the last 35 years that had serious inroads and global ties. And that's why everybody jumps on the fucking conspiracy theory of he was killed by the government because he was getting too big. No, just some fucking nut job did it. And it's still what, 3 years after the fact, Frank got killed. You still Comello's still in a nut ward, which I guarantee you that's not going to last. Once he gets out of there, he's going to be done. He's going to be done. 100% done. Tell a grandfather story, Jeff, from the 4th of July. Did he ever throw a block party? No, he was never. Listen, my grandfather was the type of guy, he liked to go to the beach and he would sit up on top of the beach. All right, I'll tell you a story. So when I was a kid, and you guys can roll your eyes at this story all you want. When I was a kid, we were all in Newport, Rhode Island at the beach. My grandfather had his own parking space there, which nobody else ever had. And we would have to leave early because we needed to beat the Solomons to the fucking beach. This is why my grandfather kept a pecan in his car, because we had to beat them to the beach to get to the parking spot. So he'd whip out his prick and just start pissing in the pecan rather than pull over like a, normal human being. But anyway, we're on the beach one day and my grandfather sat sort of on the top of the beach so he could look down, and he just sat there with his hat on, his sunglasses, and a cigar jetting out of his mouth with a little thing of scotch. And he would sit there all day. Wouldn't go near the water because he couldn't swim. But he would just sit there. And I was with my cousins, and my cousins were all younger than me. And we're on the beach, and this older kid started picking on my cousin. And I got tired of it. And this kid, I think I was 7 or 8 at the time. This kid was probably 12 or 13 years old, bigger than I was, but he kept pushing my cousin in the water and then holding his fucking face down in the water. And then I said, stop a couple of times. You know how like bigger kids, older kids are like, hey, go fuck yourself. So finally I punched him in the fucking face and knocked him to flat out on his back. He gets up, goes running down the fucking beach. I'm like, good. You all right? I said to my cousin, you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. Not a big deal. Kids fight. A little while later, I'm standing there and I look down and I see this kid coming back with 2 parents. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm going to get my ass beat for this. I shouldn't have hit the kid, blah, 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 but he was bigger than me. I was coming up with all these scheming ideas for why it was acceptable what I did. And what ended up happening was, as the parents were getting closer and closer, I guess my grandfather from up on top of the beach saw what was going. He watched the whole thing. So he starts walking down, but I don't see him because he's behind me. So we're sitting there and she's like, walks up. First of all, this kid had the fucking zigzag haircut, he looked like a real fucking chooch, this kid. So anyway, what ends up happening is his parents, my mother walks up. My father's laughing hysterically, like, just he doesn't want any part of this shit because he knew what I did was right. So my father's like, he lights a cigarette because I don't want any part of this shit because he'll get mad, So my mother's like standing there and they're like, you know what your son did to our son? And my mom just looked at him and was like, well, listen, your son was picking on his cousin and we're family, and that's what family does. Well, your son's a little troublemaker, just saying all kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden, she stops dead in her tracks, doesn't say another word, and just says, we're very sorry our son did that. That'll never happen again. And then she grabs him by the arm and she's giving him the finger to the face. Don't you ever mess with people again. And I didn't get it. And then I turn and I see my grandfather standing there. That's all it took. That's all it took was one look from him. And my cousin, my cousin Joe Badway was there. That's all it took. That's all it took was a look. And they went from being like the whole, well, let me tell you something, to, oh, I'm sorry. It's just how it works. And there was another time where they were eating at a restaurant in Providence, and I must have been a baby. I don't remember the story, but the way it was told to me was that they were eating some dinner somewhere at a very nice place. I know what the place is. The place is still there. And apparently there was a waiter who was, I guess, effeminate or whatever. And apparently he was paying attention to my brother, Tony, more attention than he should have. And this is the story my father told me, like, before he died, because he was telling me lots of stories before he passed away about how crazy my mother's family was. And the way he tells it was, yeah, this guy kept going by, patting my brother on his shoulder, pinching his cheek, saying, what a good little boy. But my uncles and my grandfather were all sitting there like, this guy's, and keep in mind the time period, guys. This wasn't 2022. This is like the probably 81 or 82. And people did not like gay people in those days. And my family was always accepting of everybody, but this is my brother. Okay. And he keeps carrying on this whole little, I don't want to call it flirty, but borderline, this is fucking nutty. And so my father, who was getting upset at the whole thing, was just kind of like, you know what, the guy's just being nice, whatever. He's not going to touch nobody, blah, blah, blah. Well, my uncles didn't want to hear that. They were fed up with it. And so my the way that my father told me was they told my brother Tony, go outside with your siblings for a few minutes. And my dad like walked my brother to the door. And then my dad says, and then I hear all of a sudden out of the back, behind me, pots and pans and some guy screaming. And he goes, he looks over at the table and your grandfather and your uncles were all gone. They're beating the crap out of the guy. So, okay, well, I don't know what that's all about, but goodbye. Let's see. So yeah, there was a lot of things about that. You know anything? Frank Piccolo. I know some people in the Piccolo uh family, but they're probably not related. But I know specifically what you are talking about. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if there's any other stories. I've told you guys the doubloon story, and I told that last week. Um, do you think the feds had anything to do with the recent shooting? What recent shooting? Oh, my dad and the birds. Oh God, my father was a nut. I think the raccoon story is better, but that's such a long story. But yeah, that oh my father and the goddamn birds. I don't know what it was. He thought birds came to see him, came to visit him, but yet he called them cocksuckers and everything else. It's just he was. My father was something else. My father was something else. Couldn't tell you. I have no idea what that guy was talking about. Haters gonna hate, whales gonna mate. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what recent shooting you're talking about, but if you're talking about a school shooting, I'm not even going to talk about that. Just not my thing. And I don't think anybody gives a fuck what my political opinions would be. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, the one I just told you about happened on Federal Hill. Totally, totally. I remember when my grandmother died. Gatonen's son was who handled all of our family's deaths and whatever. Like the same church we use, the same priests we use, and then everybody that died went to Gatonen's son, and then they get buried at St. Anne Cemetery in Cranston. And I remember we showed up for my grandmother's funeral, and I remember going in, and I had never seen a dead body. I was just like a kid, junior high school, I think. I'd never really been to a funeral. And I remember going in, and of course, my parents forced me to touch a dead body, which was like the most repulsive thing I've ever done. Now death doesn't bother me at all. I just am immune to it. Uh, but I remember that I was introduced to like all of these uncles who weren't my uncles, but they were my uncles. And I remember that they were in the back room all counting cash. They're at a goddamn funeral counting cash. So I don't know what that was all about. I don't know if anybody was paying up or what that was all about, but no, I haven't looked into occult influences and organized crime at all. The occult's just not my thing. Just not my thing. Uh, Great job with the Gravano video you recently did. Let's say 8,000 views. Yeah, we did a lot of views and a lot of a lot of the stuff that so many people on YouTube are just want views so fucking bad. And that's not why I'm here. That's not why I do it. I do it to drag you over to my podcast because that's where the really good stuff is. Let's see. Your dad was right about the birds. My boy was dead on a bird, came landing on a machine in the middle of the factory, loud as hell. Yeah, my father was weird. He thought that they came to visit him in the yard. And so he went from having like one bird feeder to like 1,500. Like, and my father had no depth perception. So it was like one every foot instead of one like every 50 feet, 60 feet. It was like all in a circle. And then he wondered why the goddamn raccoons would come in the middle of the night and knock everything the fuck down. And then that's what started the war with the raccoons when my father pulled out M90s and tried to kill them. And he blew out the windows of the house doing it. My father was in Vietnam, so he knew how to make explosives. And what my father ended up doing was putting like 90 M90s together, duct taping them with one fuse. But the thing about my father was he didn't think things through. And rather than having a fuse that's like 10 feet long, oh, let's have a fuse that's, 9 inches. And when you throw the fucking homemade IED, why don't you throw it on the grass? Because it's going to be loud. Why do you throw it 1 foot out the door? And when it goes off, the fucking windows came flying in, all the glass and everything. And then he tried to send the dog out. It was just a mess. My father was crazy. Let's see. Can you please settle an argument I've had with a friend? This person says Joe Colombo spit in Carlo Gambino's face. No, it never happened. Never. That never happened. What you have a tendency of seeing is that people often distort the reality. I don't know. Honestly, I do not know where people get their information from, but a lot of the time it's not accurate. I got to tell you, it's just not accurate. Not accurate. Yeah, my grandmother was born in Easton, Pennsylvania. Well, she was born, all right, let me restep. She was born in Italy, raised in Easton, Pennsylvania, and then like at an early age moved to Providence. That's when she started working for Gaspari Messina, bootlegging and running heroin. I hate to tell you that, but that's what she was doing. And then she met my grandfather. But yeah, I have a lot of relatives in Easton, PA, believe it or not. Not that I would have ever met them because I've got honestly, probably 100 first cousins. I come from a big family, monster, huge family. That was in the day where you were Catholic and there was no such thing as contraception. So, let's see. Joe Colombo didn't have the balls to. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. No, he absolutely didn't. And he wouldn't have done that anyway. Even if he disagreed with him, he wouldn't have done it. It's just amazing to me, the distortion in history. Yeah, he did serve the country. 2 tours of Vietnam, Bronze Star, Silver Star, Freedom Medal. My father was a decorated war veteran for sure. For sure. And then he went to work for the federal government in the secret, what they call the black world. He worked in the black world. So it's funny because I tell this story all the time that when the feds raided my house in 1990, I want to say 95, 90. No, it was after that because they brought up my criminal conviction. So it had to have been 2002. The FBI raided my house. And when they came in, it doesn't matter all of the circumstances of that, but it was funny because all of these years, I wondered why they let sort of what their accusation was go, because normally they don't. But then I realized my father had like fucking black world. He was an SR-20, whatever the fuck, which is like 10 levels ahead of presidential clearance. So whatever my father did, and I really don't know what he did, to be honest with you, he couldn't tell me. It wasn't CIA. It was much deeper and higher than that. But I always thought that my father somehow got me out of a jam. I don't know if he did or not. I'll never know. But when he died, William Cohen, the former defense secretary, was there. He got like all kinds of letters from like former presidents that knew him, like knew of him. And, and then they gave the family the weirdest sort of recognition medal I've ever seen in my life. It had like all of these like planets and it was like a hologram deal and it said Black World Affairs. So I have no idea what my father did. I really don't, but I know that he was compensated very well for what he did, but when he went on vacation or for work, there were no phone calls. He would just be back when he would be back. So what is the Black World? Black World operations. Black World operations would include killing dictators, killing presidents of other countries. It would include arms dealing. It would include all kinds of things. It also would include things like nuclear weapons trade. It would include things like 9/11, because before my father was, believe it or not, my father was supposed to be on the flight that crashed outside of Pittsburgh, but he got a call 3 days before that saying, "Don't take any planes. We've got weird stuff going on." So he drove instead. Just like I was in New York prior to 9/11, and he called me, I don't know, 2 days before. He says, "Hey, why don't you come home? I miss you." For my father, first of all, my father to call me and say he missed me was not an abnormal thing. That's just the way my dad was. He just, screw taking a train or fly back. Just come on, just rent a car. You'll be fine. I'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand it. And then when 9/11 hit, he woke me up and he pointed at the TV and goes, "Those motherfuckers finally did it." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Someday you'll understand." Apparently, prior to this, New York and DC had ordered a bunch of high tech radars that included, some of the contents were uranium based, the radar detection that we have. And you have to worry about stuff like that because if they leak, it can cause cancer. Just anyway, just take my word for it that whatever happened in 9/11, I don't think he knew about it, but he knew something was up because New York and DC had ordered a ton of these things, rush order, like get them from other buildings if you have to. So, from his standpoint, he always believed that 9/11 was done by our own country. He never believed that it was other people from other countries. But that's just the way my father was. And for my father to say that, um, was something, you know, but he would always tell me that he would, and I'll give you a good reference point. My father would have to have lie detector tests once a month. So if I met anybody that was Russian or North Korean, I had to tell my father. Like he said to me, "Listen, if you bring over any friends that are like Russian, like off the boat, I need to know. If they're from Korea or North Korea, I need to know." And then he would have to go tell his people. That's just the way it was. So he had lie detector tests once a month, and still to this day, I have no idea what he did. I really don't. I used to tell him, I said, "Oh, we're aliens." He would always laugh at me. Um, but I can tell you one thing. I went on a business trip with him one time to Atlanta, and they were in the middle of the fucking woods, and there were all of these tarps up, and there were men in suits walking back and forth, and they were military. They weren't even military guards because military guards would be in camo. These guys were like in all black shit I've never seen in my life. And he says, "You're not allowed to come with me." And he had to get me a special hologram card to even get into this area, but I couldn't leave the car. I had to just sit there. And I remember when they pulled the tarp back for him to walk in with like a bunch of other people, I could see like all of this metal fragments over on the ground. And still to this day, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like part of a nuclear bomb that was buried, that was leaking. I to this day, I don't know. I don't know. And on his deathbed, I begged him to tell me what he did, and he just said, "I wish I could, but I can't. Someday you'll know. There'll be a book about it someday, somewhere, somehow." So, but he had been out to like Mare Island, Area 51. He had been to all those places. So, all right, I'm a little tired of your stupidity, so you're out of here. Bigfoot. I wish it was Bigfoot. My father knew stuff. He knew stuff, and he always seemed to know. All right, so you guys really want me to tell you a story like that's, and I'm not proud of this, but this is going to show you that the power that my dad had. Okay, when I was a kid, all right, I've told you guys that I was a troubled kid, and that I did things that weren't great. Well, there was a certain kid in school, when you're kids and you say, "Oh, my father has guns, he has this, he has that," and the kid says, "No," and you say, "Well, I'll show it to you." He goes, "Well, bring it to school." That's what I did. I took a Chrome 1911 45 to school, and to show it to my friends, I hid it in a water tank out back of the school. Don't ask me how the fuck my father found out. All I know is that like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I had just finished lunch. I'm in my class. I look out and I see my father staring at me. Now, you cannot go into a school without identification. They would always do that. Somehow he came to the school. He convinced the secretary and the principal of the school that he needed to see me alone. I don't, maybe he made something up. My mother died. I don't know. But I get out in the hallway and my father says to me, and I quote, of all the fucking things you have ever done, this is the stupidest. Where's the fucking gun? I said, well, I don't have it on me. I didn't bring no gun. Jeff, I said, all right. So it's out back under this thing. You got to lift this thing. It's over there. And he just looked at me and says, I'll see you at home. And he went out back, got the gun, took it off school property. It wasn't loaded. The firing pin had actually been taken out of it. But my father somehow got into the school, was able to get the gun. And here's the interesting part about it. He never mentioned another word to me about it. Never. I would have been headline news at like 11 years old. Yeah. Not cool. Not cool. But it was only designed. There wasn't a clip. There wasn't a firing pin. Nobody could have gotten hurt. There was nothing like that. But my father just knew me well. You know, maybe he saw me pop it in my bag. Maybe he thought, I don't know, maybe he overheard. He listened. I don't know. That's not the first time my father saved my ass. You know, but whatever he did, he was able to convince people to just don't pull him out of class. Let me go see him. So I don't know what he said. But I've never, ever, ever told that story in my life because it's embarrassing. You know, you're a kid, you don't know any better. But it was right after that every gun in the house was gone. I mean, my dad had 38s, 45s. Like the 45 was actually his father's. My grandfather, his dad, was a colonel in the Air Force in World War II. Big time military guy, huge military guy. And it was his sidearm. So I've never told that story. I don't even think my brothers know about that. Because we just tried to keep it as quiet as we could. But yeah. Yeah, my father. And you know what, Mike, now that I think about it, you're probably right. You're probably right. Because he knew everything I ever fucking did before I did it. Like he just had a way of finding out. He just had a way of knowing shit. But that probably has a lot to do with what his job was. You know what I mean? So, you know. My father bailed my brother out of something kind of similar. Yeah, that wasn't the first time my father bailed me out of something. Let me tell you. But that was a big one. That was a big one. And I don't know how. And the thing is to be honest with you, where we lived and where my father's commute was an hour every day. So if he would have gone to work that day, I got on the school bus, did my thing. If he had gone to work, that's 1 hour up, that's 2 hours. He didn't even go to work. From what I understand later on, he just said, oh, I just kind of knew what you did. And, you know, I didn't want to rush to the scene. I just wanted to wait, you know, and anybody could have found that thing. Anybody could have found that thing. So it just, you know, my father was something else. He used to bust my mother's family something fierce all the time. I'm going to make him an offer he can't understand. I had this cousin Georgie who was real fucking slow. And my father used to bust his balls because he was a made guy. And my father used to bust his balls and goes, yeah, I'm going to make you an offer you can't understand. And everybody would start laughing because Georgie was slow. But Georgie thought it was a compliment. So Georgie liked to use explosives in South Florida with killing barracuda with dynamite and C4. He would go to, when my father lived in the Keys, he was stationed there. Georgie would come down with the boys. He would say my father's name. My father had a nickname, but I'm not going to say what it is. But he would say, "Oh, you know, let's get some fireworks." And fireworks was C4, and they would blow up. They would troll for barracuda and then drop C4 or dynamite into the water and blow them up. So, yeah. Crazy stuff. And Georgie had a weak leg because he was missing part of his arm because he tried to throw a hand grenade through a car window and he missed. Hand grenade Georgie. Oh, geez. I don't know if he was a secret agent. I don't really think so. I know a lot of his friends were all CIA guys and, you know, NSA and above like that type of stuff. But, I don't know. He knew a lot about Chernobyl for some reason, which is a little weird, but you know, he was, I don't know. Did I ever, oh, geez. You know what the story, I might've told this on Mob Talk and I'm not going to tell it now, but there was Jesse, you might remember, did I ever tell you the story over on the podcast of my uncle John and his fucking regatta shit? And how my father crashed his goddamn boat intentionally in a lake and watched it sink because my father hated how pretentious he was. Did I ever tell that story? If not, I can tell it. It's a funny story. It's up to you guys. Because I'm only going to go on for another 15 minutes or so, just because my eyes are killing me. But I don't know if you guys ever heard that story. This story's hilarious. Because my grandfather, my Uncle John, who married my dad's sister, he was a prick from Maine. And he'd go, I'm going sailing in the regatta. All right, so I'll tell this story. So my grandmother, his mother lived in the Poconos, and my aunt and my uncle just moved in with her. You know what I mean? She was elderly and whatever the fuck. And if she had too much wine, she'd burn the goddamn house down. And my father never liked my Uncle John. Never liked my Uncle John. He was a prick. He was a rich prick. He was pretentious. And my father always thought it was funny how he made all this money, but yet they're living with my grandmother and her parcel of land in Pocono Pines. And so my Uncle John, and by the way, next door was a mob boss's house from New York. There was nothing but gangsters up there. And so what was funny was my Uncle John had these sailboats, and he would race them in the regatta on the lake. Like, let's be realistic. It's a fucking lake. It's a man-made fucking lake. You're not regatta doing anything, you prick. But he was such a fucking prick. An unbelievable prick. He ordered these little rocks, these fucking pebbles, like $5,000 worth of pebbles to put on his dock, which was about 3 feet wide and about 4 feet long. And being a kid, what do you think a kid does? A kid throws the rocks in the fucking water. That's what we do. This is what we do. We throw rocks in the water. He'd come, Jeffrey, stop throwing rocks in the lake. I'm going to have to go scuba diving. You're not going to scuba dive. It's 2 feet deep, you prick. So he would always find a reason to bitch. So I would intentionally, you know me. Oh, yeah? All right. So I'd intentionally grab a handful and throw him in there just to fucking drive him goddamn crazy. So he was always talking about the regatta, and he was like some fucking, what do you call it, some regatta champion on a fucking lake. Like, how about your kids are good? How about you raised good kids? No, let's talk about our sailing accolades. And I never got it. And I didn't like him. And he was a prick, and he was always mean to me. So I was always kicking and throwing the rocks. Well, anyway, one day my father says, you know what? I want to go out in the sailboat. I said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, let's take your uncle's boat out. I was like, Pop, he doesn't even let me take the canoe out of the fucking paddleboat. He goes, fuck him. Let's do what we do. That was just my father getting back at him. And what had happened was the day prior, I had thrown rocks, and my Uncle John came down to the dock and like shook me like a fucking rag doll. And when my father heard about it, he was fucking irate. He was going to beat him up, but he didn't. So the next day we get out on the boat, on the sailing boat. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but my father was like looking at the weather, and he was all excited and giggling because there was wind. And I didn't understand. He's like, let's go out. Let's go out. So we get on this sailboat, and he's teaching me how to sail. And as we're in the sort of middle of this lake, there's this big fucking rock, right? So we're sailing around, going very slow. And my Uncle John is like with a megaphone on the fucking, bring back the sailboat. You did not have permission. I have the regatta. And that's literally the way he talks. I have the regatta to sail in. And he's wearing like the fucking captain's fucking hat, like a prick. So he's screaming and saying all of this fucking nonsense. And finally, my father says, you know what? Fuck him. And my father goes, put your life preserver on. So what do you mean put it on? He goes, well, buckle it up. Buckle it up. So what do you mean? He goes, fuck him. My father turns the boat. We go very slowly back around. Maybe, I don't know what the distance was, maybe 4 football fields away. All of a sudden, the wind kicks up behind us, and this boat, which was really only going probably like 4 miles an hour, I don't know what the knot conversion is. Next thing I know, we're like popping off the waves. And like, I'm like, Pop, we're heading towards the rock. He goes, son, when I tell you to get down, you get the fuck down. You understand what I'm saying? So what do you mean? He goes, when I say get down, I want you to lay face down on the fucking thing. All right. We're going. This rock is getting closer and closer and closer and closer. Next thing I know, he screams, get down. And my father launches the goddamn boat right onto the rock. Puts a hole in his prized boat. We start to sink. We start to fucking sink. So I'm like bobbing in the water, and then now my Uncle John's coming out in his little motorboat screaming, "Oh!" Not concerned with me, not concerned with my father. And my father is just giggling. He's just giggling. He put the boat intentionally into the rock to sink his fucking prize sailboat. So he floated back to shore. It was hilarious. And I don't think he ever spoke to my father again. But my father looked at me and says, "Son, you learned an important lesson today." So what's that? He goes, "Don't ever let a prick be a prick. Always put them in their place." And that's where I get it from. Yep. I got all kinds of stories like that. My father was a nutcase. He once put fucking honey and sugar all over my Uncle John's back deck because the bears would shit everywhere. And we right before we went out to dinner one night at the Pocono Pasta Palace and Pub. My father poured sugar. It was like sugar, pancake syrup, honey all over the fucking deck. And we came back, there was fucking bears everywhere, all over the back deck, shit everywhere. My father just giggled. It was stupid shit like that my father would do to get even with somebody. So yeah. Please bring back the boat. I have the regatta. But yeah, my father was hilarious. All right, so we're here to talk about the mafia, but I figured I would talk about a couple of stories that were pretty funny. My grandfather, my Uncle John was a real fucking dick. And he told me never to come back to his house. That was the final thing. He says, "Jeffrey, don't ever come back to my house. You pissed on the toilet seat." My father goes, "He's a kid. They have no fucking aim. I don't care. I don't want him in my home." My father's like, "Look," and my father looked at him and says, "Motherfucker, my mother paid for this house. It's $1 million house. You're living here rent free. Go fuck yourself." And then they tried to pawn. It was funny because when my grandmother started to get really old, like 95, 96, just before my father died, they made my father pay for all the fucking old folks home shit so they could take her house. They're ugly people. But anyway, I had an uncle like that, told us, order anything you want, eat tonight. So my little brother and I, of course, of course, of course. The rest of us, yeah, of course. And that's the thing over there. Like they had this light. Have you guys ever had light salt? Light salt. It's the most disgusting shit. I wasn't allowed to have real salt there. I had to have light salt. Guy's just a prick. And I remember when my grandmother died, we went to the funeral. It was at Arlington National. That's where my grandfather was buried. He was a prick then too. "Hi, Jeffrey, how are you?" I say, "Yeah, whatever, Uncle John. How's the fucking regatta?" He goes, "Regatta, it's great. I've published 2 books on the regatta." Shut up, and nobody's talking to you, you prick. And my cousin Russell Romano was there. And he's like, "I've never liked your Uncle John." I said, "Yeah, me neither, but you married into the family like a Dunsky." Like a Dunsky. Oh, we've got 83 people. Everyone's leaving because I was telling regatta stories. Amazing how that works. Somebody else must be on. I'm not even really sure. Not that I care. Maybe Angel Gotti's on or something. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the next 3 minutes and answer whatever questions you guys may have. Today is, I don't know what day it is, guys. I'm sorry. But we've got a new podcast coming out on Friday. And then we will be back on Monday. And we'll probably do like Monday, Thursday, something like that, or Monday, Wednesday for next week. But you guys can count on us being here. I'm sorry that we didn't talk all about the mafia, but I like to share stories about my father, my grandfather, just because there's some shit that's just too funny, and I think I like telling them because it forces me and it jogs my memory. It forces me to remember. And that's, thanks, Miss Can't Be Wrong. And also, excuse me, if you're interested in joining our podcast, mobtalkradioshow.supercast.com. That is where we tell a lot of these stories. And if you think these stories are nutty, you should head over to the radio show because we tell a lot of personal stuff over there. You know what I mean? And the diabetic salt is so disgusting. Yeah, no, I agree. But what we are going to do starting next week, and I'm going to say, let's do Tuesday of next week, guys. We're going to do a topic and we are going to drop the link and let you guys come in and we're going to have a good old time. I'm sure you have, Jesse. I'm sure you have. And we'll cover a topic. We'll do a Q&A and we're going to bring you guys on and we can talk about whatever you want. I mean, granted, I'm trying to keep it to organized crime, but sometimes I just like to discuss things. Now, for Friday, on the podcast. Let me just give you a heads up. Sammy Gravano committed perjury about 14 dozen times. We're going to talk about that. We're going to have direct testimony that proves that Sammy Gravano was a drug dealer, a big drug dealer at that. I also have FBI 302s from 11/25/91 and 11/15/92 and from 1/6/92 that directly corroborate what we've always suspected about Sammy Gravano killing people for their businesses. You can't refute this. Anybody can say they don't like me all day long, but you cannot refute the paperwork I have in my hands. This is the FBI's paperwork. It's not like I invented the shit. Just the haters left. Well, you know what? Listen, I could have 14 people or 20 people in here. I really don't care. People think, and I'll be honest with you, people think because I don't have 300 in my chat that I'm not liked, but look at my numbers. That kind of says it all. Live chat's maybe just not my thing, you know? And I also think that people want me to go, and another thing, you fat, you know, and I'm just not going to do that. I'm not drama. So I'm just going to do what I do best. And if people don't like it, then guess what they can do? Is there going to be a part 3 to the Roy? Nope. Roy DeMeo series is done. Completely done. I tried to cut off organized crime at a certain point. I'm not going to talk about current stuff. I believe me, if I wanted to, I could talk about current stuff and it would be like amazing, but I'm just not going to do that. Because I like walking. I like my knees intact. And 2, I have too many people that I know that are involved and I just don't want to disrespect them. And I wouldn't do that. So if you're talking about the history and everybody's dead, who are you really offending? And at the end of the day, I just want you guys to learn something. That's what's important to me. No matter what, that is what's important. So I'm going to get out of here for tonight. Hopefully my fucking eye heals. Otherwise, I'm going to come back with an eye patch and look like a fucking pirate next week. Or I'm going to look like the fucking Reverend Lowe from The Silver Bullet, one of my favorite Stephen King movies ever. What a creepy fucking movie that is. If you guys ever get the chance of watching The Silver Bullet with Corey Haim, the Reverend Lowe is the creepiest fuck in that whole movie. You know, Rachel says this is a history class. And that's what I like to do. I like to talk about the history of organized crime, and that's what we are going to continue to do. And so next week, when we come back on Tuesday, I'm going to have a whole thing for you guys on the history of organized crime. We are going to drop the link and let everybody come in and hang out and ask whatever question they want. And then we'll open it up to open forum if that sounds good to everybody else. Yeah. Live chats are everyone's thing. I follow a few people. Yeah. The thing is if that's an interesting name you have. If I wanted to do the drama thing, I would probably have 700 to 1,000 people in here every night. If that's what I wanted to do, it's just, I know that, but I just won't do it. It's just not worth it. So let me get out of here and we will see everybody on Tuesday at 7:45. Thanks for hanging out. And I